correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. One Steve again, well, sort of, I'll explain more about that in a minute. But anyway, we're going to have another episode this week. We're going to talk some cool gaming stuff. But before I get into all that, I want to take a minute to tell you about another podcast here on the D20 Radio Network. This week, it's going to be Eberron Renewed, which is, well, as you might guess from the title, it is a podcast based all around the world of Eberron. It's an actual play podcast, and we had their GM, Eric, on, might even have been episode 6, and by my count, this is episode 176, so it's been quite some time, but it's a great show. They do actual play content in the world of Eberron. Their first campaign used 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Their second has used Genesis. And I'm told by Eric, because I met him in April, I believe, that when they get to their third campaign, it's actually going to be a custom design system that he's working on. So, like I said, the play is really good. The stories, their characters, their role play is all great. So check that out again. That's Eberron Renewed. There'll be a link in the show notes, or you can search on whatever your favorite podcatcher is, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it. So, all that being said, as I said, I'm the only, conventional Steve here. However, I do have a guest, and, this guest, their appearance makes them an honorary Steve at this point. So, we're going to talk about a local convention for us here in Pittsburgh this week, that being the Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, or PGX, and back again is Wizz to talk all things PGX and the fun that was getting to 2024. You're muted.
Wow, that's a great way to start things off, isn't it? I mute myself. So yeah, to be an honorary Steve, I am. That is my first podcast honor of any sort. So I'm flattered and humbled and stupefied.
As long as you're confused, you're in good company.
Well, but yeah, thank you so much for having us back on. It is hard to believe that, this is an annual thing now where it's like I'm on 3 times because we've done this more than once.
Right. Well, I think, you contacted us when we came back after the great COVID collapse, and it's just been a thing ever since. I've become friends with you and Alex and Colt, the main organizers, and other people, and it's a really cool little event. But it for me, one thing I love about it is it's half an hour from my house, right? It's great. But I don't know where you want to start. But for those who aren't from the Pittsburgh area, this show kind of got thrown for a loop. Oh, when was that? Like in the spring? March?
Yeah, it's pretty distinctly pressed upon my brain when it was.
Well, see, I was just going, oh crap, that's bad. You had a vested, this was affecting things for you. I just needed to know where I was going to have to go.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it was March. It was whether it was beginning or end of March, I can't exactly remember, because after I got first word of what was about to happen, the rest is kind of a blur, a flurry of activity. So to let everybody know out there, we thought that the show was going to be relocated, ostensibly. We got a phone call from the GM, and I knew it wasn't April. So I was really shocked when he called and told me contract's canceled. They're selling the building. And I was sitting at the Oyster House having lunch. And I got that phone call, and I was just like, wow, what do I do from here? And I proceeded to walk out to my car, put on some loud music, lose my mind for 30 seconds. And then I called my partners, Colt and Alex, and told them no, I'm not screwing with you. This literally just happened. I took the rest of the week off of work into the following week, and we scrambled looking at venues for several days. And we
Mhm.
looked at venues all over the region. We didn't want to leave Pittsburgh. We didn't want to leave Monroeville, really. And we absolutely did not want to change our dates. That was the biggest challenge.
I know you had, already had signage printed and banners and graphics done and all sorts of fun stuff because I had
Well,
seen, pictures you had posted on socials, at other events or whatever, advertising for the show already.
yeah, well, more terrifying than that, we have about a 75% retention rate on vendors. So that was 75% of our vendor hall that had prepaid for the following year, locked in their spots. And once you get the ball rolling on a show to a degree, like you start using your capital to facilitate the next show. Now, the venue was kind enough, they're like, well, we're going to give you your deposit back. And that was super generous. And I mean, everything worked out in the grand scheme of things, so I can't be too upset. The management at the convention center was phenomenal. Like I don't hold any fault or ill will towards them. They were excellent. They kept us appraised of the situation every single step of the way. For them, it was very personal too because they helped get this show started. They approached us
Right. I
back when
remember
there
you telling me
was no
that.
PGX, right? They approached us, so this was like their baby too, and they, were helpful in ways that I had not imagined that they would be because their world was about to go sideways. For us, this is like a passion project still. We all still have our day jobs. For them, that's their livelihood, and it's the
Right.
livelihood of many of our exhibitors who do multiple shows a year in that space. And we kind of try to remind ourselves of that as we went through this whole process of, you know, it sucks for us. It really stinks for the community, but man, this could be like tragic for some of these folks.
Yeah.
So we proceeded to start looking for new venues. Fast forward to about 30 days later, I get a phone call. Mind you, now we've already talked to many venues and we were coming into the final legs of that process. And we were about 72 hours out from signing a new contract. And we still had the full support of all of our exhibitors. Nobody had asked for a refund, which was phenomenal despite everything. None of the exhibitors were demanding their money back at the castle doors, you know. And I get a call from the GM at the Monroeville Convention Center says, "Hey, I think we're going to be okay. Can you give me 72 hours?" And I was like, "I'd really, really like to, but I need a venue, and I have a venue to potentially. I need to ink a contract. I can give you 24 hours." And within 24 hours, they had me a new contract, the same contract that I had the previous before everything got canceled.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was wild. That wasn't the only drama that occurred. The other piece of drama that occurred is that there was a DoubleTree hotel there that we had worked with for years,
Right. Literally across the parking lot.
a stone's throw away, and that's what we loved about it because nobody had. While they're not like an integral venue, which would be ideal, there's not a whole lot of those around Pittsburgh to begin with. So it was the next best option. It was a four-star hotel with well over 100, 300 units, and it was in the same parking lot as the convention center.
Yeah.
Well, all this uncertainty exposed the ownership, I suppose, of that property to some financial vulnerability, and they had to shutter their operation, which meant we now lost our hotel. The benefit of all this was we had established relationships while looking for venues with Visit Monroeville, who has been an awesome new partner in this. And they kind of took the bull by the horns because I was like, yeah, like I said, we part time this. So the loss of a month for us equates to about like 2.5 because I only have half as much time to dedicate. So we were behind. And I was like, well, now I've got to dig into this whole contract issue with finding new hotel partnerships for our guests and for our attendees and our staff. And Visit Monroeville was very gracious, and they said that they would take that burden and they would get those, arrangements made. And I was able to wash my hands of it, which was phenomenal. So we are working with numerous Monroeville area hotels for all of those needs. And if you buy your badges now, you should grab your hotel rooms. They're just not going to be right at the DoubleTree. Even if the DoubleTree, by some stretch of the imagination, came back as a functioning hotel under different ownership, we won't be working with them this year because
Yeah, it's just too late.
right. So yeah, that was a very fun side quest that I hope I never have presented to me as a hook again, and never have to go on that adventure again. Like, please just send me on a rat killing quest again. I'd rather do that one because this, I unfortunately was not a never ending story, and
Yeah.
we got it squared away.
Well, and look, I mean, I know, obviously, like, like I'm a local here too, and I mean the whole community because this got just dropped on the whole community, and you weren't the only, like it was literally months of shows. No, nope, sorry, you know, I mean, and so it ended up you got local state government, I think, got involved, and things got squared away. So, I mean, and I think too, though, that in a sense, like especially for you, like you were saying, Visit Monroeville got involved and whatever really speaks to the roots that the show has in the community and that it's kind of a community event. I mean, yes, you three are the quote unquote organizers, but it's and I can say from my experience having been there 2 years, it's like I recognize people that be it volunteers or just people who were attending the show. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember seeing them last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it really, it's starting to feel like it's not just a passion project anymore. It is a responsibility that we have a certain stewardship now at this point, 3 years in, that people are now this is their convention. This is the show that they go to. I mean, there's
Mhm.
way bigger shows. Gen Con just ended, MagFest down in DC, Origins, all massive, amazing shows. But not everybody gets to go to those or can go to those. So to have something local is hugely important. And this community's already lost a cornerstone show when they lost Replay FX during the pandemic. And people still talk about Replay when they talk about certain elements of PGX. And I find that truly humbling, flattering, because that was an amazing show that we are not at the scale of yet. And as this thing keeps growing, I think it's inevitable that we will get there, but we're not there yet. And so it's really touching to hear people talk about PGX the way they talked about Replay and how they were really struck whenever it was like, oh, we're going to lose another awesome gaming convention.
Well, and I think too, like, I've never gone to a Gen Con or made it out to an Origins or anything like that. But PGX to me has, I think, kind of a unique feel because, again, my understanding Origins and Gen Con are specifically pretty much tabletop gaming and related. PGX is, and I say this not by any way is any sort of, whatever. It's a nerd fest in the
Yeah.
best possible way, right? It's video games, it's tabletop, it's pinball, console, arcade. It's
Nerdcore music, tattoos, I mean, yeah, and that's kind of what we wanted because like my journey in gaming has not been a straight path. It's kind of ebbed and flowed and it's involved board games. I'm surrounded by it in this room that I'm in. My whole history of gaming is here and it's some of it you can see on camera. It's Nintendo cartridges, it's Nintendo Switch, it's tabletop RPG books. It's my copy of Battle Masters and Hero Quest over there. That's been my journey through gaming. And I wanted that to be part of the gaming show that we do. And my partner Colt, who you met, his background is very much the music side of it. He was very inspired by MagFest when we started really conceptualizing what the show was going to be. And music's a huge part of that. And you could do a show, you could do PGX without music or without board games or just board games and tabletop or just video arcade games, but it just would not be, it would be a different show completely. The atmosphere, the vibe would be totally different.
it's not the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think too, like, it's kind of this neat crossover because, I'm obviously much more of a tabletop and specifically RPG guy, but like I still enjoy playing video games. I've got a wonderfully modern PS2 hooked up upstairs. Somewhere out in the garage, there's a Super Nintendo that I keep meaning to drag out and try and, but like I like that stuff. That stuff's cool. And music, I mean, I've always loved music. So for me, it fits really nice. But like I know a lot of my gaming friends, be it they're maybe more into they're also they love the board games and they love, this video game, that video game. It's kind of this kind of mishmash of everything that all of us seem to like in some form or other. It's just where your levels are.
Yeah. Well, and I hope that our show gives enthusiasts an opportunity to step out of their comfort zone without maybe necessarily feeling like they're stepping out of their comfort zone, because hopefully PGX is their comfort zone. But instead of just hanging out in the arcade or the pinball lounge the entire weekend, maybe they make a trip across the hall, across the building, over to the board game library or the tabletop RPG area. I love it when I hear stories from people who are like, I've never played insert genre or category of gaming. And then like, until I went to PGX, and
Mhm.
then I tried it. I played my first tabletop RPG at PGX, and I'm typically only a video game. That is awesome in my opinion because it means that they're expanding their tastes and their enthusiasm for gaming in general, and thereby they're supporting more artists, more writers, more developers, more publishers, and hopefully the ones that they support are ones who are developers at the show or artists at the show or game runners at the show, you know,
Yeah.
um, because you go to a massive show like Gen Con, and if you're a smaller publisher, you're just gonna, I'd imagine you're probably just gonna slip away. Now, there's still a huge advantage for them because the volume of attendees is massive, but you will not feel like a marquee exhibitor at that show,
Mhm.
you know. Whereas our show, kind of a big deal, if you're
Alright.
a developer.
Yeah, I know, we've had 2 people on thus far that we met at PGX, local, developers, producers. In fact, and I met a 3rd creator last year that I'm trying to figure out a good way to wedge him on. He does more of it's a board card game, but he actually only lives, like, 15 minutes from me. And I got to talk with him a bunch last year. He's a really, really cool guy. Plus, like you said, all the guests you bring in, different people. It's just a really like I joke about it, but it's, my complaint last year was I was having so much fun I didn't get to go do other things that I wanted to do.
Well, hopefully we fix that for you this year because we listened. Well, we added a third day. So last year, well, for previous years, it was always a 2-day show, and for Saturday, Sunday, and the more we looked at it, I mean, and that was really due to most of the people who work PGX volunteer. It's their time and their labor, and they want to do it because they know that this thing won't happen otherwise.
Mhm.
So I always try to keep that in the forefront of my mind whenever we decide what the hours of this thing. And I was halfway through. It was halfway through the show last year. It was like Saturday night. I was looking around. You know, attendance seemed really strong, and I was looking at our schedule and how absolutely packed it was. I was like, man, this thing could really use like an extra day to breathe. We probably can financially justify it at this point. Let's add a day or let's discuss it. So we rallied all the leads for the whole show. We pulled them all off of whatever they were doing into a back room and said, all right, here's the situation. Here's what we're thinking. But we kind of need to know because we need to talk with the venue about this now. And everybody was super enthusiastic about it. And then they went and asked their teams, and they all seemed relatively enthusiastic about it. So we're all right, we're going to add this third day on. So now the show runs from 2 p.m. on Friday till 10 p.m. Friday night, and then the same hours on Saturday and Sunday. So 11 a.m. to midnight on Saturday and 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on. People have asked us why we only went till 10 on Friday. And really, honestly, it's a pilot. It's a trial, if Friday is super strongly attended, then maybe next year we'll push the hours all the way to midnight. Again, though, the calculation there is like we don't want to overtax our staff. We only have so many of them, and we can't afford to lose any of them because they're all very critical to it. So we limited the show hours on Friday a little bit, but that's still a solid chunk of time from 2 p.m. to 10, and it allows people to come after work.
Right.
And yeah, it allows us to schedule a bunch of stuff that was kind of like shoehorned in last year. We're going to move the Arcade Pit Gaming Trivia Show to Friday, and we're probably going to have a bunch of our panel content on Friday instead of trying to have it compete with live music. And what else are we going to have on Friday? We're going to start our tournaments. Our tournaments are going to run longer now. They're going to not be all crammed in primarily on Saturday. They're going to start on Friday and run through the weekend. So
Now, so what? The dates this year are October 4th, 5th, and 6th?
you nailed it. 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Hey, I actually got dates right without a calendar.
Yeah.
Someone needs to write that down.
And just to put the whole venue thing to rest, because I've had to deal with this, it's amazing to me. Like we were at Teco this year promoting PGX, and I had people come up to me in person, not knowing who I was in relationship to the show, and tell me, "Why are you promoting here? Your show's canceled." Well, I settled that then and there. But additionally, we have already got our dates penciled in for the next 2 years in Monroeville.
Wow.
And I can tell you, we will never do what we did last year where we straddled the end of September and the beginning of October. Our dates will always be the first weekend of October now.
Okay, so like the first full weekend of October, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, no, I like I said, for people, it really it is. It's like the vendors and just like it's just cool gaming stuff. Be it like if you're into the retro console stuff, there's people like heck. What was it? There was a box with the old TI cartridge computer. I remember somebody was selling
Mhm.
one last year.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
we have old gaming PCs available on the show floor for you to play. We might have an Apple IIe this year, I think, but we definitely have a Commodore 64 because that came through me. So like I know that's part of the library. Um, there's a Vectrex on the show floor. We have Pong machines. There's a very good possibility. I never like to promise that these things are going to be on the show floor because old school hardware can be fickle, but we're collaborating with a podcast called Guys, Games, and Beer this year, and they do all video gaming stuff. They are bringing an old Atari 2600 retail key. So, like,
Wow.
and there's not many of those in existence anymore. So, even if you don't want to play it, it's still cool to see where that all started,
Well,
you know?
right, like, that's part of the thing, right? Like, that old TI computer, I remember we had them at my school when I was in grade school.
Hmm.
The old TIs with the cartridge
Yeah.
on the left side of the thing, and you hooked it up to an actual TV, and
Right. Right. Well, right. That was my experience with the Commodore. Commodore 64 was my first video game console, and it was the same thing. I'm like, wow, this has a keyboard in it. Like, that's cool. I guess it's not a, I guess it's a computer. And you plugged it into at the time, black and white television is what we had. Not to date
right?
myself too terribly, but yeah, like the video game TV was a black and white TV because Dad was not giving up the the color wood console television in the living
Yep. Yeah. No, and that's the thing too, right? Like, I mean, you got a huge, I'm assuming you're working with what's the, I know it's a local like club or organization that
room. Pack,
brings a lot of, yeah.
Pittsburgh Arcade Collective, yeah. So yeah, we work with them. That's Mike Hof. He's the founder of that. It kind of spun out of PGX because it didn't exist. I started talking to Mike, and he's like, "Hey, I've got an idea. What do you think?" I'm like, "I think you should absolutely do that thing. Like, I've got enough on my hands with Pittsburgh retro gaming. You should definitely do that." And I had no idea how passionate those guys were going to end up being. And they're a great crew, and they want to see this thing really thrive. And man, are they bringing it this year? we just had a conversation on, what was it, Tuesday night, about what the direction of the arcade is going this year. I don't want to promise an exact number because it's all still very fluid, but we're looking probably at a little minimum of 100 machines. And that's going to be arcade and pinball and, some environmental stuff probably. And yeah, I mean, they are determined to fill every square inch of spare real estate and power outlet with an arcade or pinball machine.
Yeah, I know there's quite a lot there, and like with the arcade stuff specifically, like I'm walking around and I played some stuff, whatever, but it's like there's everything from like I think there's been a Tron cab there the last
Mhm,
2 years, all the way
mhm.
from like stuff like that, and just
And not
classic,
just the cabinet, but also the gentleman who did the artwork for it,
right?
Paul
Yeah,
Niemeyer, and he's going to be back this year.
again, that's what his third year in a row.
This will be, uh, yeah,
I know it's his
I think
third.
I think it's his 3rd year, yeah. I was drawing a blank for a second, like, did we do guess the 1st year? I don't believe we did, really do guess the 1st year, so no, yeah, this would be his 3rd year. And Paul is PGX nobility as far as I'm concerned, because Paul is the reason we started doing guests, and he called me out of nowhere, and I'm like, "There's no way the guy calling me right now is the guy who did the art for, like, the concept for, like, Mortal Kombat and Tron, and what else did Professor Pac-Man. Like he did a bunch of really cool games. Satan's Hollow. He did Satan's Hollow. The art for that. I mean, and yeah, it's like Paul. Don't even worry about it unless you don't want to come. You are on the roster for being a guest at PGX. And as the show grows, you come with us for the ride. So,
Yeah,
um, and that's just cool that you get to do that. And what last year we had NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and we had the voice for both of them, Jimmy
yeah.
Pittsburgh, and he was awesome. And to have that experience to be able to like playing the game, and all of a sudden you hear like, wait, when did this arcade cabinet get surround sound? Oh, it's not. It's actually Tim behind me announcing the plays. You know,
Yeah, no, and that's the cool thing is stuff like that, right? I know I've seen some of your announcements on social media and stuff. You got some other voice actors coming in this year, some game designers.
Yeah, we decided to make a push. That was something else that, kind of in the vein of the Visit Monroeville. I'll tell you what, the community of people who run shows, and I'm not saying this because I'm a part of that community, so I'm biased. Honestly, what I saw from showrunners on the East Coast who we only kind of like superficially knew through Facebook were awesome when they heard about what was going on with our venue. A lot of them reached out and they're like, "Look, I genuinely don't know what I could do to help in this situation, but if there's anything I can do to help, let me know."
Mhm.
And 2 of them that come to mind were Paul Jenkins with Cleveland Gaming Classic and Patrick Milligan, if I'm pronouncing his last name right, out of, Syracuse with Retro Game Con. And both of them have been really awesome. And Patrick, reached out to me, and we were talking, and I was thinking, "What can we do?" Because we lost essentially, 2.5 months to this, we have to figure out how do we inject some nitrous into these lines to make this thing go a little quicker. I'm like, well, we haven't dipped our toes into the celebrity guest realm yet. Like we've dipped into like the influencer realm and some like developer guests, but never like anything that you would consider like celebrity. And he was very, very generous and gracious and said, "Hey, I've got a really good talent agent that we work with up here. I would be happy to connect you," and provided me that information. And as a result, now we have some killer guests. We have a trio of what you would consider like celebrity guests. We have Roger Clark, Benjamin Byron Davis, and Courtney Taylor. And if those names sound familiar, it's because these folks have worked on some pretty massive IPs. Roger Clark was in Red Dead Redemption 2. Benjamin Byron Davis was in Red Dead the series, Fright Crew, Guardians of the Galaxy, LA No War, and Courtney Taylor was in Mass Effect, Resident Evil, Destiny, Fallout, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And these folks also have television credits to their names too. And I'll tell you what, the response to them has been great, being able to have guests like that. So, and we've got some folks returning. We've got some new tabletop guests. We haven't announced them all, but we were talking before the show. We started the show, and you saw I had the book for EZD6 here. DM Scotty. I am so happy that we have DM Scotty coming because I'm a fan of his work, like genuinely. Like I love his game and his philosophy, and I'm having a bit of crisis of faith right now when it comes to 5e because my group has hit those levels where it becomes starts to become not so fun during combat, and I really want some. I want to play more game and have more action, but it's really hard to do that with 5e. When you get the combat, everything just snarls to a halt, and I feel like to a degree with my players, it almost compels them into combat because they're like, well, if we waste a bunch of time trying to talk our way through this and it still ends up in a fight, then that's all we're going to do tonight. So let's just get to the fight. And that's a little disheartening as a game runner. Whereas EZD6, it's not painful like that. And you can play it and get, all the pulpy story bits that you want to get in or allow those to organically occur. And then when the action happens, it happens and it's dynamic, it's cinematic, and it's simple. And I want to see how DM Scotty does it. Like I want to see it from the man himself.
Well, right.
Um,
That's always I think that's a cool thing, and one thing I enjoy about, doing this show and getting to interview creators is hearing their kind of philosophies behind the stuff. Like it's one thing to read the book and go, "Oh, this is a really cool mechanic, whatever." But when you hear the stories behind it, we got to interview Jay Little quite a while back, who designed the Fantasy Flight Star Wars engine. And he was explaining to us, and for those not familiar, the dice all have symbols on them, and there's a dice that you use if you play a Force user that they call the Force die, and it has light and dark pips on it, and you roll it, and that's basically what Force you have access to. Well, Jay explained to us that as far as the number of pips on the die, there are equal numbers of light and dark pips on the die, but there are more faces with dark side pips than light side pips. And he said that all goes back to the Yoda line about,
mm,
is the dark side more powerful? No. But how is it? But easier, or that Yoda quote,
mhm,
right? That
right.
is what inspired the pip distribution on the die in the game. And hearing
Huh,
stuff like that, and like you said, like getting to watch the creator run the game,
right.
it there is, or
You
even
get to
just
see
talk to them.
what well, and one at least for me, and I feel like this is probably not uncommon to game runners, is you want to learn. You're always struggling to figure out where the shoe leather is that you can cut to make the game move as quickly as possible, but still feel like it has substance and verisimilitude, and everybody's still having a good time, and nobody feels like they've lost their agency. And with a game like EZD6, and to get to see DM Scotty do it, like he may even just throw things out of this that the game he created. He may even trim the fat some more. And I'm really curious to see how he does it. And I may actually chisel out a 4-hour block of my entire weekend and sit down at his table and play, which I never have gotten to do at one of the shows ever, but this may be the year where I actually yeah.
Well, and the other thing too that I would say that this can give you an opportunity to do as a gamer, and I got to be kind of on the other side of this last year. I ran a game called Havoc Brigade, which is this goofy little light. It's actually designed as a convention one shot. Well, I had 6 people sign up to play. It was an entire home gaming group, DM, all the players, everybody.
That's so cool.
And so they already had kind of like they knew kind of their own dynamic in this
Hey, their
game.
chemistry.
Right. And this game is much about playing off each other, and it's craziness. It's hijinks, it's shenaniganry, it's orc madness. Okay. They had so much fun messing with each other.
Yeah.
just because it was like, hey, we're doing something, we're allowed to be goofy. They were probably making all kinds of inside jokes that I didn't get, but I didn't need to.
Right, right. So you knew they were laughing at something, like, "Oh, I must be doing something right."
We had an absolute ball with this game. And I would say, even, take time to do that. Go play something with your group, depending on the size, right? If you can all get together and play something different, and, if you've got someone who's the forever DM, get them to play too.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing about going to convention attendee. I go to conventions now kind of as research, but I had the privilege of going to MagFest last January, and it's an awesome show. If you ever have the opportunity to get down there and go to MagFest in DC, I highly recommend it, so long as you attend. But no, it was a really cool show, and I actually got the opportunity to play in a game of The One Ring. And I have the One Ring books, and I've never gotten to play it, and I want to. And I'm kind of like, I'm a learner by doing. So by playing in a game gives me a better idea how the game runs. And that's one of my favorite things to do at like most conventions is go find the tabletop hall and see if there's something there that appeals to me and then go play in it. And that's something you get to do at PGX.
Right. Yeah. I got to play 2 games last year that I've never played before. Oh,
Yeah, and
one
this
of
year
which
we'll
is
have 3 days to play games. So maybe
right.
we get to play
Right.
in three.
Yeah, no, it really is, and like I said, for the tabletop side, yeah, there's gonna be people there running games you may never have heard of. I have a tendency to run more obscure titles because I like them. Um,
Well, and I encourage people, like, honestly, like, you can play I don't wanna talk in, like, platitudes, but, like, most likely, it's gonna be much easier for you to find a 5e game
right,
than anything else. Maybe after that, Pathfinder. If you come to a convention and you have an opportunity to play something different, you should, because you might not get that opportunity again.
right.
I know that we've got some really cool stuff that's been submitted. Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland.
I played that last year.
Yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classics. I think Mutant Crawl Classics has been submitted. I know that Easy D6 is going to get run. I hope Mork Bori and Pirate Bori get run. The One Ring. I hope all of these games get run. I do hope that Pathfinder and 5e also get run because you should have an on ramp for people who have no experience,
Well,
and
I
that's the
mean,
most expensive.
they're the peanut butter and jelly of the thing,
Yeah,
right? I mean, they're and to be fair too, I would say if you're someone out there who has kind of dabbled in gaming and went, "Man, it feels complex," just because if you hear most of us hardcore gamer people talk about 5e or Pathfinder, we'll talk it's pretty simple, it's pretty basic. Well, it is, but it isn't. Because you have to recognize that most of us hardcore people have been doing this for years.
yeah.
So, like, I started the first D&D I ever played was Advanced 2nd Edition. That was almost 30 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
5e
Yeah,
is different, but it's not that different.
it's
So
not, but it's structured in a way that, like, I've noticed, like, it's like my kids, they play in my game. Now, as a result, they've had the benefit of playing some wonky gonzo stuff because dad occasionally gets tired of 5e, and I'll be like, "Well, we don't have the whole group. We're playing Easy D6, we're playing Dungeon Crawl Classics, we're playing something different." So they've gotten to. But I've noticed that 5e has inculcated this habit in them that I'm trying to break. And I have a mantra for it. It is declare, don't request. And by that, I mean, tell me what you're doing, declare what you're doing. Don't ask me if you can do it.
yeah,
And 5e, I feel like, kind of reinforces that. And the reason why it does is because you have a cheesecake factory of a character sheet in front of you that tells you everything that your character is good at and bad at. And if you're bad at it, you might as well not even bother. So people will dictate to themselves, they'll limit themselves in a game where your options should almost be limitless. They will limit themselves by what's in the four corners of that character sheet.
you know what? So 2 things I wanna go here. 1, this is where I say, this is what other thing I think conventions are great for. You can go try a game because some game mechanics encourage the I want to do this. Like you say what you're going to do, and then we figure out how to roll for it later.
Hmm.
Or if you find 5e intimidating, or there are lots of games that are not even as complex as 5e is or isn't, depending on your, there's a whole spectrum there. So you might find a game that, like the Havoc Brigade I runs on D6s. You get a handful of them, you try and get 4 and higher. That's all. How many are 4 and above? That's all. Fine. But two, and this is more of kind of a play theory. I heard a quote from somebody a while back. I think it was Jim Davies, better known as WebDM. And he said he tries to encourage people to play the world, not their character sheet,
Hmm.
which is kind of sounds a lot like what you're saying. And to me, like you said, that to me, that's the freedom of tabletop games, right? Video games
Right.
are great. Video games are cool. But in a video game, I'm limited by whatever was coded in there by the
Mhm.
designers and the coders.
And as
On a
the RAM
tabletop
and the
game,
yeah, as the capacities of the hardware gets bigger and more sophisticated, we can hide the veils and walls a little bit better in these
mhm.
sandbox games, but they still exist. And a game like 5e, Dungeons and Dragons 5e, it's got so many layers of rules that it's not just the players who are imposing that upon themselves, it's also the GM, because you don't want to take away, you have all these feats and all these special skills, and your players have invested in a path to unlock those.
Right.
So now I constantly have to have it back in the back of my head whenever a character's saying, well, shouldn't I be able to do this with this or this? And it's like, well, sure, maybe. But the problem is this guy invested in being able to use his shield in an offensive manner. And now I just give it to you, and it marginalizes his investment
Right.
as a player. So the game masters almost like pressured into limiting the players. The players limit themselves based on the character sheet, and that's the last thing I want out of my tabletop RPG.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear loud and clear. That's the thing that, like a lot of times it's oh, you know what? That's and I think I can be kind of a I don't want to say a problem player, but a challenging player at times because I will do stuff that like I didn't know you could use that like that.
Well, and it's honestly like the more liberating the rule set is, the less that player is a problem, in my opinion, because I don't have to worry about flipping through tomes of rules to figure out, is this possible in this game? And granted, you can always throw out the rules when
Right.
you're running. Sure, don't let the rules get the mechanics get in the way of the fun. Sure, but then why use a specific system if you're going to throw half of it out instead of finding a system that actually encourages a style of play?
So I have a question for you, and given you've got a lot of history with video games, I'm curious to see what you think on this. Do you think that some of this structure and rigidity that we've seen develop into like 5e and a lot of games comes from a player base that is used to video games and wanting to know that when they press the X button or this combination, this is going to happen?
I
And
would,
you know what I mean? Like, is
yeah,
it a
no, I'm tracking.
predictability thing?
Yeah, I'm tracking. Well, so I didn't play 4E, but one of the biggest things I heard from people who did play 4E, and I've watched a lot, listened to a lot of people, talked to a lot of people on this, is 4E was Wizards of the Coast's answer to the World of Warcraft phenomenon.
I would absolutely agree.
And they wanted to feel formulaic and predictable, like you're playing Diablo and you're like, oh, there's these branching trees, and if I do this, then I get this. The problem is, unlike Diablo, which as awesome of a game as it is, will put me to sleep if I play it too long because there are no curveballs. Once you've got your build done, once you've got your whirlwind barbarian in Diablo 3 all kitted out and statted out, you just go and wake up 2 hours later. You're like, oh wow, I just been late sitting here holding this button down, half asleep. You know, there's no curveballs. And I don't want that in my tabletop RPG. I want my tabletop RPG experience, even if I'm playing a module, to be very different, if not completely different, from anyone else who's played it because that's half the fun of playing a module. Is like, well, how did you tackle this? How did you play the Lost Mine of Phandelver? How did you play, Sailors on the Starless Sea? How did you do that? Like, oh wait, you did this, And I mean, my son has an awesome, awesome Portal Under the Stars story from Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is the
Mhm.
0 level funnel in the core book. He has an awesome story, and it's because I finally got through to them. Stop thinking about what your gong farmer is not good at anything, which means he is liberated to try everything. And
Mhm.
my kid did. And he threw all the dice, he took all the risk and gained all the reward and had an epic like moment where that my family, my table, my friends still talk about that moment and even have like songs associated with it, that remind them of those moments. That's what they should be. They should be liberating. And, we have come to a point where it's like people almost want to be told what they can do because they're so used to it from video games. And it's kind of like the serpent eating its tail now. Whereas like the JRPGs of old and the PC RPGs and like, what were some great RPGs back in the day? Um,
FF2, was it?
yeah, the Final Fantasy games, the Dragon Warrior games, but then on PC you had King's Knight and things like that. They were all directly I mean, they were inspired by. They were trying to create as much of the tabletop experience as they could in a video game. And as time went on, it became more similar and more similar and more similar until now finally we've got to a point where you have a game like Baldur's Gate 3 that's almost nearly indistinguishable from the actual tabletop game, which is awesome. But it took us longer to get there than it did for them to figure out how to limit tabletop RPGs to make them more similar now to video games. And that I think is the loop that we're in, where you're seeing some of these really, really rules dense games have that in common because it looks familiar to the player base. And the
Mhm.
player base thinks that's what they want until they experience something different. And I have that struggle with my table. My table started out with 5e because I had taken a hiatus from Dungeons and Dragons from tabletop RPG since second edition. When Wizards of the Coast bought TSR, that was the end of it for me. I took a break for a while and then I came back and my family wanted to play. I was playing the game called the Genesis at the time, but my family wanted to play. I'm like, well, if we're going to get into this family, we should probably play the most mainstream thing. So we got into 5e, you know,
Mhm.
and it brought all that with it. So they were very, very reluctant to try anything different for quite a while.
I think, yeah, it goes to that comfort thing, right? Like, like, we'll just say, look, I suck at fighting video games. I am a button masher through and through. So, I tend to play more driving games or maybe some shooters or sports games. But it's because I and I think, again, this is the thing with a video game because of how they work, right? It's a progression. There is a win state in a
Right.
video game. Tabletop, I mean, yes, it does, but it's a story and the win state is the experience, not
Yes.
the result, if that makes sense.
It's the shared communion of collaborative storytelling through chance, risk, and randomization that
Mhm.
cannot be really emulated up at least until this point by computers. We're getting there with the advent of, oh, we're going to go down a rabbit hole. With the advent of AI and generative language engines, um, yeah, maybe we'll get there where these things don't have to have a bunch of stuff cached in their database, their memory, but prescripted, but they can just adapt. So maybe we'll get there with computer games because of that stuff. But that's not the mainstream yet.
But
So
it's not the same too because you're not sitting there, sharing Doritos and a pizza and,
mhm,
there's something, and Steve and I talked about this a couple episodes back, like, there is something about that, physically getting together and playing games it adds to it. It's more than just the game. And
Yeah,
I play a lot online now, but it's fun, and I'm not disparaging that anyway, but there is a different experience to playing in person, sitting around a table, you know, it just is.
yeah,
And I think that's,
yeah.
conventions are another thing, right?
Well, it gives you the opportunity to do that in a space where, because I've played a little bit online too, and I don't like it at all. And they've been some fun games, but it, I don't know, first of all, it's very challenging to have a discreet, respectful side conversation with the person next to you when you're playing online.
Mhm.
Everybody is siloed and isolated when you're playing online to a large degree, which leads to the I am the main character syndrome when you're playing online. Now, there are people who do better at it than others, for sure. But when you're playing in in person situation, if you're not clear on something, and the people sitting next to you are either your friends or friendly, you can be like, explain that to me, like while they're doing their thing,
Mhm.
and keep the game moving. Or they can lean over and be like, hey, do you know you can do this? Or you should try this. Or don't forget that those dice explode in this game. So when you roll a 6, get ready to roll again. Things like that. Now
Yeah.
granted, some of that falls on the game runner, but boy, isn't it nice when you're running a game when you have like assistant DMs at the table who can help you run things so you don't have to
Yeah.
stop and explain every rule.
Because if you're scatterbrained like me, you lose your place in the flow of what's going on, and yeah. All right, well, you have truly turned into a Steve because we just went down a massive rabbit trail. So
I am happy to do it. But yeah, so uh, I mean, we to bring it back to the convention, it is shaping up to be a doozy for
mhm.
sure this year. The music this year, we didn't even
I
talk
was
about
just
the
gonna
music
ask about that. I thought I
lineup.
saw some of
So
the same names I saw last year.
no. Well, no, I stand corrected. One, and we are bringing them back because they were the most fun of like any live music performance that we've had. I had an experience while they played their set that I've never ever had in my life before, and have never had at PGX for certain. And that was Power Glove. Power Glove is the most fun party metal band, gaming geek party band that you could ever ask for. And they're cool. They're homies. They're out of Philadelphia, so they're not from super far away. And after we did PGX, they got back to us like, "Hey, can we come back next year?" And we're like, "Yeah, we usually don't repeat. We try not to repeat at least 2 years in a row. But if you bring something to the table that people look forward to having again next year, then we'd be foolish not to do it." And the experience that I had with Power Glove was heavy metal hokey pokey. And I mean, I'm not an old man by any stretch, but I'm not exactly a young man either. And I'll tell you what, when I was a 20-year-old something man, I never thought I'd be standing in a room full of nerds and my children doing the hokey pokey to heavy metal and having the time of my life and looking around as I spin around in the room and seeing a bunch of other people doing the exact same thing, grinning from ear to ear, you know? And so that experience right there is like, oh yeah. Colt asked me, he's like, do you want to bring it back? I'm like, dude, yeah, I was hoping you'd ask because they were a ton of fun. So we are bringing Power Glove back. Our headliner though this year is Galactic Empire and Power Glove. We have them lined up, and then Psycho Stick, like I was just talking about, and we are bringing back Danimal Cannon this year. He wasn't there last year. Danimal's a homie of ours, and we missed him, so we're like, hey, we'll bring him back, and we're bringing a local this year to the show. Weird Paul. If you've ever heard of Weird Paul, I mean, his name's Paul. He's weird. He does rock band music. But yeah, he's a Pittsburgh institution. So it's a killer lineup. I mean, Galactic Empire, if you love Star Wars, but you need a little more metal in your Star Wars, then you're going to love Galactic Empire. And if you like cosplay, you're going to like Galactic Empire because they go all out, full cosplay of some of your favorite Star Wars characters in some of the most memorable, tracks from the films and the TV shows, and they do heavy metal versions of them. They are amazing.
That sounds
Power Glove
awesome.
is it's like heavy metal pop culture. So like heavy metal video game themes, heavy metal versions of some of your favorite cartoon show themes. They do a cover of the original X-Men theme that is out of this world. And I really hope that they play it because it is killer. And Danimal Cannon, if you've never got to experience a Danimal Cannon performance, um, you know, it's it's awesome. So he takes Game Boys, modified Game Boys, and he creates MIDI backing tracks with these modified Game Boys, and then plays metal guitar over top of it. And he's a one man act,
Oh, wow.
essentially. Yeah. So yeah, it's a killer lineup. And if you just want you get your party metal on, Psycho Stick, you're gonna have a good time. And people came to the show last year decked out in Psycho Stick paraphernalia. And they were like, that's the whole reason I'm here is because Psycho Stick is here. So it's going to be fun. And all ages are going to enjoy this music. Everybody's going to resonate on some level with either Galactic Empire or Power Glove or Psycho Stick because they kind of touch all those landmark tracks in some way, shape, or so. And if you're not real good at math, Psycho Stick can only count to four. So
Right. Good old count. I love that track. That is hysterical. Oh my! I'm assuming too we'll have the cosplay segment like you usually do, like we have previously.
we're gonna have the cosplay showcase on Sunday. People are encouraged to wear their cosplay all weekend, though. Please do. It gives spice to the life that is PGX and all conventions, really, all geek culture conventions. I love seeing people's cosplay. So, yeah, please wear it all weekend. The actual judging and showcase will occur on Sunday, and that's kind of your moment to have this be on center stage and be the highlight of the show. And we really take a lot of pride in keeping it fun and accessible, folks. So please join us for that. Yeah, we'll have that. We're going to have fighting game tournaments again this year. We have a lineup of, let me see if I have the information here. I always worry that I'm going to misquote it. I don't have the lineup of games for this year. I almost looked at the lineup for last year. I don't have this year's lineup of games in front of me right now. But if you go to our website, PittsburghGamingExpo.com, and look for the information, it'll be on there. I think they're still finalizing some details, but we have started taking entries for those competitions, and we're gonna have Steel City Pinball again, or Iron City Pinball. They're going to be helping us run pinball tournaments, and Pac is going to be running some arcade stuff. They're going
Oh,
to be doing a
cool.
Miss Pac-Man Frenzy on Miss Pac-Man arcade cabinets. There's a lot of different types of like competitive gaming going on if that's your jam. And something else that I'm really excited about is you remember how the last few years we've had the Steel Battalion setups in the console lounge with like the really crazy like control array where it's
Mhm.
almost like a simulator. Well, we were not content with having one or two of those. So, Guys Games and Beers bringing us a pod of I believe 10, and they're all
Holy
going to be LAN network. So you will be in a skirmish, I guess is the way you would call it, of 10 mechs, all in Steel Battalion. And if you've ever wanted to know what that experience is like, PGX is going to be an opportunity to do that.
Oh, that sounds
Um,
cool as
yeah,
hell.
we were really excited about that to have that opportunity to bring those guys here to put that on. So yeah,
Well, look, I mean, I just like wow, yeah. So October 4th, 5th, and 6th. I get it
yep,
right again? Cool.
fourth,
Monroeville
fifth, and
Convention
sixth.
Center, right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, PGX. You just mentioned the website. I know you're
Yeah,
on Facebook. People can follow you there. There's lots of announcements.
yeah. Facebook and Instagram are our primaries. We use Threads a little bit. We're almost non-existent on Twitter because Twitter had some weirdness and they blocked our official email, so we couldn't make an account. even though we'd never used it with that email address. So we're working around trying to get a official Twitter going. We have like a non-official one, but yeah, hopefully we'll have that probably after PGX this year. We've got a lot on our plate, and that's really kind of not a primary concern. So
Well,
yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, the website, and if you want to check out videos of the show, we have videos from previous years, and those can be found on our YouTube. That's really the only content we put on there is the video recaps of the previous years. Yeah, so if you go on YouTube, you can put in Pittsburgh Gaming Expo. You'll find our videos and a bunch of videos by content creators like John Riggs and Stephen Haywood and Steve Wright. Yeah, and Steve's everywhere.
there are Steves everywhere. There
um,
are many of us.
yeah, and you can kind of get a taste for what the show is. And I almost forgot to tell you, Steve, that we are curating and building out our own in-house board game library this year.
Oh,
Every other
cool.
year, it's been generously donated. This year, we decided to go a different route and we decided to curate our own. And the philosophy was not just to have as much volume of games on the floor, on the board game library, but to have a volume of games that makes the most sense for a convention. So, games that are highly accessible, fun, quick to play, and that should really bring a better a high quality experience to folks. Because if you're going to sit down and play a board game during a convention, you just decide you're going to give up a decent chunk of your time at the show. So we want you to have a good option of games, a good selection of games. So right now, the PGX dedicated library sits at about slightly over 200 unique titles.
Cool.
And as we get closer to the show, we will probably be trying to add to that a little bit more. We're doing it through donation, through purchasing as we can, and yeah, it's something I'm pretty proud of because it'll be nice to know that we have that, and we may be able to use that for other things too, for other events. So yeah, it's like I said, there's a little bit of everything for everyone. And the vendor hall is going to be off the charts this year. We expanded the vendor hall. We changed some elements that were space fillers last year, and then this year we had such a strong turnout and interest from exhibitors. We gave that space filler up to create more vendor space. So hopefully there's more vendors that everybody's interested in this year.
Cool. Yeah, I know there was lots of neat stuff. All right. Well, it's getting to be stupid o'clock in the morning now.
It is. It is.
But yeah, no, I'm jazzed. I'm really hoping to have a good time at the show. And I know Steve is planning to attend. So I mean, yeah, come out, find Wizz. He'll be the guy in the Pac-Man jacket.
I may have some alternates this year. So, but I will be in a gaming centric blazer and I will probably have an earpiece in. And I'll be running around like a nut.
And I
So,
may or
but
may not be in my Van Halen striped Hawaiian again. Which,
I mean, it's
if
good
you
to be
know, you know.
recognizable. You're right. Right.
Um,
Steve, well, thank you so much, dude. It's always a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. I love getting a nerd out. Do you want to do game of the week real quick? I know
oh,
we
sure, why
mentioned
not?
it.
We always do game of the week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So let's do game of the week. All right, what you got for us?
I'm going to keep it short. I have a stack here. I'm going to keep it to 2. I'm
All
not
right.
going to actually, I talked about ECD6 enough, so it's not going to be that. It's going to be, actually, I just got back from the beach and I took with me Pirate Borg. And
Ah.
I had a blast reading this system while I was at the beach. And I can't wait to run it because it does all the things that we talked about tonight. It's streamlined, it's brutal, it's fun. It's got that Pirates of the Caribbean energy to it. So I can't wait to play this. It's got a very simple mechanic, and I love the layout of this book. If like product design 101 right here. The face pages are useful. They're the fly pages, they're not dead space. They're all useful for something. I don't feel like I need a DM screen with this. If I were to run this as a brand new game runner, I could run right out of this book because I know everything I need is going to either be on the front cover or the back cover,
Mhm.
on the inside covers, I should say. So Pirate Borg, and then the other one is Return to the Dark Tower. I played this at Free RPG Day and at my local game store, which is Game Masters in Westview. And a buddy of mine by the name of Tim ran this. And I had a ton of fun with this. And the mechanics for this game are super clever and very easy to grasp. I played with my two kids, and the first thing I knew was going to put them off was that they each only had one polyhedral die in front of them. And they were like, "Oh, where's my pile of polyhedrals? Because I'm a goblin." Well, after about 10 minutes of playing this game, they didn't care anymore because they were having so much fun. And basically, how this works for anybody who doesn't know, and hopefully I'm not doing a terrible job of explaining this, but the core mechanic of the game treats the so you either have a D4, a D6, a D8, a D12, or a D10 in front of you, not a D20. Um, all the rolls are player facing, and they treat the faces of the die as a range, like, or, as a matrix, so to speak. So if you're really, really good, it breaks the game down into books, boots, blades, and bones. Instead of like wisdom, strength, and charisma. But you can look at that as somebody who has even a little bit of experience and understand, okay, I can figure out what books, boots, blades, and bones probably correlate with.
Right.
And so if you are somebody who is good at books, this is going to sound weird at first because it did to me and my kids, you only get a 4-sided die. But when you roll books, you only want to get a 2 or a 3. So if you're rolling a D12 or a D10 and you're trying to do books, you only have a 2 out of 10 or 2 out of 12 chance of getting that. Whereas if you're only rolling a D4, your percentage is much higher. So it's a really interesting game mechanic. It's super quick and easy to grasp. My 14-year-old, who has very limited experience running anything, tabletop RPG, as soon as we finished, she said, "Dad, I want to get that so I can run it." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sold." So I went out and I bought the core book. I bought the accessory. I bought the tower. I bought one set of big chunky polyhedral dice so everybody could get their one die. And I bought the Game Master screen. And she hasn't looked at the book since I got it. So, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm not a 14-year-old, so I have a little more commitment involved here, and dedication. But those are my two games of the week, and I highly recommend everybody gives them a try. And I don't know, Return to Dark Tower is done by Ninth Level Games, and Pirate Borg is done by, I believe it's Limithron, and it's compatible with Morkborg. So if you already have Morkborg, you already know how that game runs, and you could probably blend the two.
I have Morkborg and Cyborg. I have a friend who really wants to try Pirate Borg. I've played both Morkborg and Cyborg. They're hilarious fun. They're dark, but like in a very entertaining way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, those sound cool. Mine this week is going to be a little game I stumbled onto today. It's a game called Quick Small Fantasy. It is a tiny fantasy RPG. This one is actually intended to be of a size where you can carry it in your shirt pocket. Now, the PDF is going to set you back the massive whopping cost of $1.20. Okay?
It's not freemium?
Well, okay, but for your $1.20, you're getting 3 different versions of the PDF, one sized for screen reading, and 2 different ones designed that are set to print in Pocket Mod format, which is designed so you can print it all on a single page, fold it up into a little 8-page pamphlet, and carry it in your shirt pocket. And you need 1 D6 to play this game.
I love it.
So I mean,
that's like, even better than sorry, DM Scotty. You might have lost me.
For $1.20, I mean, like, what can you get, a cup of water at the convenience store for that?
Not even. Got to make a purchase.
Right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I've not tried it, but it looks amusing. It's from it says Felbrigg Harriet. Who they are, I have no idea, but it sounds amusing enough. So yeah, it's called Quick Small Fantasy. So I
I'll
don't
add
know.
it to my list.
Something you can carry in your shirt pocket seems fun. That's
Yeah.
a game to give your kids in the back of the car on a trip.
Yeah. Yeah. I teased them with that idea this year on vacation. Said, maybe I'll run something while I'm driving. And they're like, Dad, we'd rather you just focus on the road. Nobody needs that kind of survival horror.
That's like the old joke. Yeah, I want to die like my Uncle Bob, peacefully in my sleep, not like the other 6 people screaming in the car.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And I'm glad we squeezed in game of the week.
Yeah. No, great fun. Like I said, looking forward to the show. Steve should be there. I'm hoping to be there. I have something I have to. I told you about it before we started recording, but I if I'm in the state, I intend to be there.
Well, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and like I
So
said, it's not something I would miss for many things, but unfortunately, I was not consulted in the scheduling of this other thing. So
the nerve.
right,
Why does everyone not schedule their important life events around Mike?
right, right. Oh, anyway, but like I said, we'll be talking some more about the show on other episodes, because look, it's a local show. You guys have been great with us, we did a panel to 1 year. I ran some games last year. Yeah, got to play a bunch of stuff. So, I mean, more than happy to have you come on, talk about it because it's local, it's cool, it's community, right? So,
Mhm.
all right. Well, thank you very much, Wiz. Any closing thoughts?
Uh, Thanks to the community that stuck by us through this. They've done it twice now, through 2020 and now through this. And every time they do it, it's just the show gets even better. So thank you. It's humbling, and we appreciate it, and we take your support seriously.
All right. So, yep. Come to Pittsburgh. Check out PGX. We'll put a bunch of links in the show notes for you to check everything out. That being said, hey, look, be kind to each other. Get out there and play some RPGs.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.